So then she tested and she got the license and she's doing all this. And then I want more. She's doing her gigs. And then it was kind of funny. You'd see her schedule at work and it's like, why is she everything's pushed into like Tuesday through Thursday. What's going on? And I'm like, what are you up to? And she's like, New York, or Monday I'm in New York, and Friday I'm in Chicago, and this weekend I'm here, and this weekend I'm there. And it was really it was cool to see because you could tell she did want something more, and she was always working for something better for her. So
look, hell of an intro. I tell you what you info, but I never really been the type of dude to give no info.
Welcome to the Walk and Grow Show, everyone. It's Ronnie and Courtney on the mic. This is the one place where you're going to get to empower your mind and transform your reality. And as I always mention, if you guys are having any sort of value in this show, share it with someone else, because you don't know what you are sharing this show can do to somebody else. So give that person that blessing. But in today's episode, we have a special guest with us today. I was looking at her doing quite my background, my due diligence, and I was just like, I think we have an interesting character here. And I call everyone characters. Just this is not doing anything disrespectful.
Okay.
I think we have someone that's really interesting that you guys can learn a little bit from, because again, she does 3 different things that we'll talk about, but you guys will get the gist. But Courtney, you want to go ahead and take it away and formally introduce?
Sure. I'm happy to introduce our guest. I first actually met Adara because I was supervising her in her internship. So, of course, very grateful to have met her at work. But quickly, once I stepped out of that supervisor role, of course, we became very close friends. And I think it won't take very long for you to understand why, because our energy is just kind of on the same level. And her personality and her, just super fun. Like I said, bubbly energy is just contagious. And I'm excited to have her here and for her to talk about all of, like you said, she does so much and is just super busy. So I'm excited for her to be able to share all of those things and plug herself a little bit. So here we go.
Thanks, guys. Happy to be here.
Thanks for allowing us thanks for even taking the time to do this with us today. And now, is there anything that Courtney missed that you kind of want to shed a little bit of light on?
I guess maybe just to talk like those things that I do.
Let's just dive right into it.
There's a lot. Yeah. So obviously, if you guys know Courtney, if she was supervising me, it's because I was on my path to becoming a therapist. And I'm out in Chicago right now, being a therapist there. Also a musician. That's been forever. Courtney did not supervise me on that, unfortunately.
No, not even close. No experience.
And then I'm just always kind of like involved in a lot of other stuff, trying to, do like the TikTok game with mental health right now. Super involved, like in my community here. I'm Greek and I'm very involved like with that stuff. So there's just like a lot of different like parts of my life that I try to keep up with and just be a rounded person. So.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned you've been in the music industry for quite some time. Based off of what I saw, songwriter and a singer. But I think you missed one.
Yes.
You didn't mention that you play the guitar.
Oh, yeah. To me, I feel like that was a means to the end. I was just telling someone recently that like when I first got my guitar, I was like 9. And there was this old man named Ray in the back of this like just like a local music store in Tucson, Arizona. That's where I grew up. And he would do guitar lessons back there. And I remember going a few times and then he taught me like a song that was just like 3 chords and then the lyrics. And I was like, oh, that's all I need. I just need a few chords and then I can write some songs about boys. Perfect. That's all I need, Ray. Thank you. So yeah, I've been doing that ever since. So definitely a singer first, but the guitar was just, needed that in the background. So I wouldn't consider myself a shredder by any means, but gets the job done.
I mean, that's impressive. That's a skill in itself. I mean, it's one thing I've always aspired to do, and I think I'll probably do this in my later time in life, is learn the piano. And I don't come from a music background at all, so that's going to be one of my biggest challenges that I give myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's fantastic though, and just to hear you say that it's kind of like a background thing is kind of funny, which of course your voice is so powerful, and just seeing you and I mean you are doing the piano and stuff on your Instagram as well, right? And are you using any other instruments when you're because I've seen you go out, I've seen you play out and do gigs and stuff like that, but I know some different things on your Instagram and
mostly guitar, just because travel wise, super easy for me to just show up somewhere with my guitar and sing. Definitely had some players that I played with in Arizona for a very long time. They're still doing great work for me, and we're still, working on recordings that we had done when I was still in Arizona to release those. But since I've been in Chicago, it's just solo shows. But I've been meeting actually a lot of other fantastic female artists that I have a show coming up with some of them, and just trying to do my own thing. But meeting other female musicians is really important to me.
I saw, speaking of the shows, I saw that you had, I think it was six of them recently, or I may be miscounted, but it was an entire month full of it. And I was like, man, that's impressive. Like,
Yeah.
how are you pulling these gigs together? Like, what is it that you're,
Yeah, I well, six is
okay,
a good amount for me right now. I will say I used to definitely overload myself with more than that when I was in Arizona, but I've been so lucky. Like when I came here, I really didn't know if anybody was even going to give me
right.
a chance, because I don't know who I am, and you kind of have to just start all over again and being knocking on doors and being like, I swear I can sing, just please, give me a chance, or just pay me in a beer, and give me my first shot. So I had a fantastic business owner help me out with my first show here, and then that just happened to be someone that was super connected, and I met a bunch of different people through that, and I've gotten shows through them, and actually some of my bookers from Arizona have helped me book out here. So just super lucky, and just trying to stay connected and keep positive relationships in my life, because then things work out later
Hmm.
down the road.
I always say, you don't know where you're going to need someone. So don't burn
Exactly,
that bridge.
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's very cool. I know we've talked a little bit about, like, of course, just being friends and knowing each other through work and stuff, about family
Yep.
and like origins and whatnot. But I actually don't think we've really talked about like the music, like how that actually started. And I know you said you were young, but if it's from family or, other connections that you had when you were
Yeah.
younger.
Yeah. My family, and they are fine with me saying this, have absolutely no musical ability at all. Um, I those who know me know this story, but first time I ever sang on stage, I was 3. It was my aunt's school's talent show. She was a teacher. And after the talent show, I went to watch, and anybody who hadn't signed up in time was allowed to get up and perform. And I told my mom, hey, I want to go up there. And my mom was terrified. She's like, oh, God, this is going to be terrible. She's going to embarrass herself, or she's going to cry. What is this? Because they had no idea I even was interested in that stuff. And so this is the 90s. I got up there with my overalls, my little Keds. I had a bob haircut, all things that are coming back, by the way, which makes me feel old. But anyway, the only thing I knew was the first couple lines to The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow from Annie, that musical. And your girl got up there and she just sang those 3 lines confidently over and over and over again, until finally my mom might be like, okay, you're done. You're done. We'll find you another avenue to singing, because clearly you want to be on stage. So that was the first time. And then, just lots of musical theater, choir, things like that. Because, I always joke I would have loved to be able to perform my songs when I had written them, at like 15 in a bar the way that I do now, but it would have been a little strange. So I did other avenues until I felt old enough to be hanging out at bars at night singing songs. So
Yeah, I love that. I don't know why I didn't know that story, but I'm so glad I asked.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Well,
cool.
was the aspect, since your parents or at least your family wasn't involved in it, and you mentioned you kind of took other avenues to get yourself in there. As after that point, did your parents push you at all, or was it just purely your self motivation? Just, hey, I need to get this done because this is where I want to be.
Yeah, I think my parents did a really great job at like allowing us to try a bunch of
Mm,
different things. And definitely there were, times where my mom would be like, oh, there's this singing competition, you should sign up for it. But it was never
mm.
like a have to. But she definitely did the research of things that I could get involved with. But as far as like the songwriting stuff goes, I actually know the exact moment that I started songwriting. So I don't know if you guys know the singer George Michael. He was in a group called Wham, super 80s, Wake Me Up Before You Go Go, whatever. Anyway, this singer is also a Greek man. And if you know Greek people, we're very, very prideful. And if anybody is at all Greek, we're like, oh, we love them. We basically know them personally. So this was this singer that, like, my dad had always talked about, and we had like just a real connection to this person as a family. And I was a kid, probably around after when I got the guitar, so like 9 or 10. And I remember my dad like explaining, because I had liked the album, being like, yeah, he wrote all those songs. Like he wrote the words, he wrote the guitar, all that stuff. And for whatever reason, that had never crossed my little kid mind. Like I knew you could sing, I knew you could sing songs, but I didn't know you could make the songs. So I pretty much went to my room right after that, and I have some of the journals. It's quite hilarious. It's literally me like spelling out the words la la la, do do do, like that was my song, but I wrote it. Okay. So that was like the moment I started songwriting, at least.
That's so cool. I love that.
It's so interesting to hear how, sorry, Courtney, it's so interesting to hear how people get into stuff. It's like
No.
there's so many different ways
Yeah.
of how people can get into it. That's why I think the sky's the limit. And just like you mentioned, your parents giving you the freedom to do whatever it is that you want, I think that just empowered you 10 times more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very grateful for that.
That's what I was gonna kind of say as well, is like, it's funny, like knowing not the end result by any means, because I know you have, goals and so far to go and things like that, but seeing how you perform and just knowing a little bit about, we've talked about the gigs, and like I see how you've set them up, and like I said, I've gone to some of them, so seeing all of that, but then hearing the back end of it and how it came about, I think that's so cool. And just like knowing you and caring about you as a person too, it's like, oh, little baby Adara. Just think about those moments. That's so cool to think about. But
definitely. If I would have told that 3-year-old girl singing the songs from Annie that eventually she would live on her own and in one of the biggest cities in America and have gigs and all that stuff, I would have said, you're full of shit. So it's amazing.
I mean, you are living in your dream city. You got your dream job.
Yes, absolutely.
What gave you that ability to make that transition? Because that's not an easy move.
Yeah. I honestly, it's the best thing I've ever done, and it was not easy. And I feel like, a lot of young people definitely move and make changes. But for me, being the oldest daughter, we all know what that means for a lot of families and a lot of cultures. There was always my whole life this push and pull of like, who am I versus do I do the same things that my parents have done and their grandparents have done and all that. And that comes with, society as well for women. But it was definitely not an easy choice. And I spent a lot of time traveling last year and just finding where my like soul lit up. There was a lot of cities where I would go and I had a great time. But I found myself when I was here just in an energy that was just nothing that could really be explained. And that's when you know it's right, when you can't really explain. So I made it here, and it's everything lined up in a way that you couldn't even write. I couldn't even write the way the place I ended up in, the friends I have here, the opportunities. So I know that it's right. So.
I was gonna kind of mention that because I was thinking earlier, it was kind of like she did, from my experience, she did the internship. She got done with the internship. She started working. She tested for her LMSW, which we know, like, I took a long time to do. So
I'm
to me, on the
stupid.
outside looking in,
okay,
I'll explain. So, we both were working towards our master's in social work. So of course I was supervising her so she could get out of the internship, out of school, and start working as a therapist. So she graduated with her MSW, Master's of Social Work. And if you're interested in being clinical and like staying clinical, which means continuing to do therapy, basically, you go for your LMSW, which is your licensed Master's of Social Work. And if you'd like to continue, you can do your LCSW, which is your licensed clinical, like social work degree or license. So for watching Adara and seeing how it's played out for her, it was like, to me, it was like she's doing everything right. She did an internship, she got the job, she was doing case management while she was doing her internship, like just always hustling and go, go, go. And so then she tested and she got the license and she's doing all this. And then I want more, she's doing her gigs. And then it was kind of funny. You'd see her schedule at work and it's like, why is she everything's pushed into like Tuesday through Thursday. What's going on? And I'm like, what are you up to? And she's like, New York, or Monday I'm in New York, and Friday I'm in Chicago, and this weekend I'm here, and this weekend I'm there. And it was really just, it was cool to see because you could tell she did want something more, and she was always working for something better for her. So, for, like I said, from the outside in, it was always like, it really did just kind of play out for you, and like, it just kind of fit together, and it looked like there was no hesitation, no gaps. And I know that's not necessarily how life works. So that's kind of what I'm asking is, what were the challenges, or
Yes.
what were the gaps that not everyone gets to see, or like the hard
Yeah,
parts in there?
I would love to talk about this because as much as I love everything you just said, and it is true, there are parts of, I think, society, but also myself even, that glorified that time of being so go, 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 and glorified like I'm in a different city every week. And don't get me wrong, I'm so blessed for the opportunity that I was able to do that last year. But there were times where my mind and my body were so run out by doing that I couldn't, I was just having breakdowns and being like, why? And someone would have to point out, because you literally flew from across the country this
Yes.
morning and went to work. Like, you know,
I
like,
might have been that someone
yes,
a couple times.
yes,
I
a
think I
couple
was
times for sure.
in my office.
For
yeah.
sure. So I think that, again, needed to happen. But I just, this experience kind of being put in one place for a while because I'm happy here. I mean, let's be real. I was escaping Arizona because I just wasn't happy there. But now that I'm in one place, I definitely try to value like, no, I'm going to say no to that today. And that's okay. Because I did feel like I had to say yes to so many things, and it has gotten me where I am, and that's great. But just trying to find the balance now. And for anybody out there who feels like they have to be go, go, go and have all these things that they're doing, it's not necessarily the answer.
Yeah, definitely. Was there anything in particular? I mean, I absolutely agree with you, but from either the move, or I know we mentioned a little bit like finding gigs in a new place and how that transfer happened, or like even, I mean, it's kind of funny because I know some of the answers, being like the person on your resume and things like that.
Right. That's
like, what was do you think the challenge was kind of more of like the gigs and your music, or professionally, or just the move in general, or all of it?
I don't know, and I don't want to say like, I think I was delusional about all of it in the absolute best way. Like I said, I had a feeling, and there were plenty of people in my life that were like, okay, yeah, whatever, you're going to move to Chicago. Plenty of very close people to me that were like, that's not it. I don't know why you can't just stay here and be happy here. So because of that feeling, I just ran with it, and I really just got lucky because I was a little bit delusional. I don't know what else to say, but yeah, it was just like, no, it'll be fine. I'm going to find a job. I'm going to start getting the gigs, and not to say that I was so delusional I was sitting back and waiting for them to come to me. It definitely was working at it, but I think sometimes that mindset of things are going to work for me the way they're supposed to is really powerful.
It's funny that you say, I feel like I identify with that really heavily, and I didn't even realize it when I moved over to Arizona. We did very similar things, but different directions.
Yes.
And it, like, looking back, it's like I moved by myself with nobody, with nothing. And like, I didn't know where I was going. I like ran into somebody who happened to be subletting their apartment, and I was like, sure, I'll take it.
Right.
Didn't know where I was going to live, like anything like that. And at the time I was like, this is normal. Like, I don't even really think I thought about it. Like, I really genuinely, looking back, it's like, I didn't think about it. I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Like, I was just excited to go somewhere and see something new. And now looking back, it's like, oh my, like, you did that. Yeah. And like, you live here now. Like, you really made an entire, like, major life change. And it's funny how I kind of like the word delusional. Like, you just really are like, just in that, like, no, this is what I'm doing. And like, I like delusional, while I also can identify that it's not at all correct. You know, we're just like allowing life to happen and things like that, and just see how it plays out. And but yeah, that's funny that you say that, because I think it's
definitely, and it's part of growing up too. There's been so many things in music too that now I'm like, you were so lucky, or can you like
Mm-hmm.
so lucky. Like the first concert I ever went to as a 9-year-old was to see this punk band. They're called MXPX. And years later, I actually met that singer, and he did a duet
Mm-hmm.
on my album that is on Spotify and all that stuff. And it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
and again, at the time I was like, why wouldn't this be happening? This is
Mm-hmm.
normal. And now I'm like, you lucky bastard. Like,
That's awesome.
The good saying is, when you're successful, a lot of people say you're just lucky, but they don't realize what goes behind it to get to that
Yeah.
point. So it's
right.
like, if you're lucky, yeah, because I worked my ass off to get lucky.
Right.
And
Right.
so
Right.
I like what you kind of said though. It's making that transition because we all have moved from our home state to somewhere else. I'm in North Carolina. I was in Connecticut, so
Mm-hmm.
we're all
Mm.
literally speaking the same language here. But there's something that you said that I was
Yeah.
like, interesting. How she get that? How she get to this level, which is to be able to say no. There's a lot of people that just constantly say yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes, yes, take on projects after projects. I could, from time to time, I can be that person, and so I'm being selfish here, guys.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. To see how is it that you navigated being
Mm-hmm.
able to say no.
Yeah. Man, it's been okay. I mean, if we're talking about like physically, I experienced that last year of traveling so much that my body was like, you
Hmm.
can't do this anymore. And I really, really, really wanted to. Um, but I physically couldn't. And so that, I guess, was a good like reminder, because sometimes I feel like our body will tell us things that we need before we know that we need them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but to be honest with you guys, I wish I could put this into words, because I'm just newly in
Yeah.
this headspace of just being genuinely okay with myself and like proud of myself, and that has a huge factor in it. And I so wish I could put that into words. I really do, because I want to talk about it, but it's so new. I think that'll be a podcast down the line when I get to words for
Have
that.
you
So
thought about having a podcast yourself?
absolutely, that's part of the kind of journey I'm taking with the TikTok
Hmm.
stuff right now. And hopefully it will continue to grow. And I know that you know this, but when there's just even one person that reaches out and is like, what
Yeah.
you said really helped me, like that's awesome. I mean, it's funny because when I tell people like I'm a therapist and I'm a musician, they're like, whoa, two different lives. I'm like, no, it's not.
No. Yeah.
The core of both of that is trying to connect with people. So I can do it with my words, I can do it with my singing, I can do it with music. Like it's all that. So I think if you have that in you, which you guys clearly do, so you understand.
You don't know whose life you're going to change. That's why I said try to bless someone. I said it
Right.
in the beginning. I'm going to say it again just to remind you guys, especially if you're listening at this point. Share whoever's on top of your mind. Literally, just share this. Like, hey, go listen to this. I think I was thinking of you, and I think you could get a lot out of it. But yes, yes, no, I definitely think it's needed to do more of this because again, everyone thinks differently, and someone out there could need the help that is needed for them to get to that next step. Everybody's battling something.
Absolutely. And
Absolutely.
even the work that I do with other people helps me, because I don't want to sit here, and I feel like sometimes, especially in the therapy space, people can kind of get on their high horse of like, like holier than thou. Like people come to me for, their
Yeah.
needs, and I help them and whatever. It's definitely a mutual transaction for me.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Yeah. I'm having a really hard time being in this space right now because I just want to be like, yes, Adara, and like reflecting back on, like legitimately like us sitting in my office doing supervision and like how the difference in both of our personalities
Yeah.
and where we're at and like how far you've come and grown and stuff.
And how
It's so
often I
hard.
would cry because I was just so
Hmm.
miserable, and I
Hmm.
couldn't pinpoint why I was so
Hmm.
miserable.
Yeah.
So
And not to I keep bringing it back to our relationship, but I do think it's important to point out because, like Ronnie, you asking like, how do you learn to say no and how do you learn to set those boundaries? It's like I think both of us have gone through that time of we didn't enough and we haven't enough. And I think in the therapy space, we get very used to that too. We're constantly having those conversations of like, oh, I usually don't schedule at this time, but the family really needs it, so I did. Or like, I'm scared.
yeah,
Right before this, Ronnie, I was like, I'm supposed to work at this time, but I'm
Yeah.
probably going to work really late tonight. Like, I was just saying that just to get things done and make sure you're doing the best that you can for other people. And
yeah,
because we're that way at work, we're that way as people. And I think it's actually the other way around. It's because we're that way as people that we're that way at work. But I think it's important to reflect on because it just shows, it really does show all that growth. And I think it's funny because, of course, the move and everything that you've done is a real thing that you did, but it's also so much of a metaphor of like just the personal growth and everything.
100%.
The distance is almost like, it just shows that growth in you as a person. I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask a direct question, and this is really just, I'm curious because Ronnie and I talk about social media all the time and how we are just not professionals and in that space. And so the TikTok thing is new for you. Not that you weren't on it, but the amount that you're posting and how like I see your TikToks and I'm like, I don't know how she's doing this, but she's a professional. Like it's fantastic. I love watching it. And of course I understand a little bit of the therapy background, but just your energy and everything on there. I want to know like the starting point, how you kind of got from like, ooh, I'm thinking about doing this to no, it's happening and it's consistent.
Yeah. Honestly, it's only really been like a month and a half. So I have a couple things to say about that. So I love TikTok. I'm a TikTok girly. I don't, you know what? You can call me basic. I love it. And listen, the reason why, no, listen to this, because people kind of give me crap and they say, oh, you're basic. You like reality TV, TikTok, whatever. Okay. Here's the thing. I don't like these things because I am stupid. I'm going to say that, because a lot of people are like, oh, they got nothing going on. They just like what everyone else likes. I cannot explain this feeling of like, if you're walking around, especially like the streets of Chicago, and you see a girl putting her phone down and doing a quick fit check, or she's doing a TikTok dance. I'm like, I see you and I'm like, that's so cute and cool. Like we just that connection of like, oh girl, I know what you're doing. Or like someone asks you, can you film really quick or can you take a picture? I'm always like, yes, because it's just another way that we like connect. And don't get me wrong, there is so much bad that can be about TikTok. And I talk about that with clients a lot. And I've been doing my own research of like how we can limit certain words that are popping up on TikTok and time on TikTok. But all that to say, I love it. And I was very much watching it from afar for a very long time. But again, I wasn't 100% confident in myself. And to put myself out there, I mean, I see some crazy comments on TikTok to some of these people, and that was something I really feared, because I can't handle a negative comment if I believe that about myself, So I've only started that journey recently because everything is in a little bit of a better place. But also just like, I'm starting my journey of like working towards like the clinical license and eventually one of my own practice. So building up like a following and clients eventually is going to be helpful in that way too.
Yeah.
Do you see TikTok being here for the long haul?
Oh man.
I have to
Typical
because
Ronnie.
we can go back and forth on this one because I do see a lot of political issues there. And that's the only thing that prevents me from really being on that platform, to be honest.
Yeah. I don't know. There needs to be, because, okay, here's an example I'll give. I have and I did a video about this recently, but I have clients from teenagers all the way to like 55.
Don't tell me they're all on TikTok.
Oldest client. And
okay.
not all of them, but I'm saying the people that it comes up, you would think it's just the teenagers. And of course it comes up with the teenagers, but I've had people, Gen Z, millennials, even Gen X mention that it's either taking up so much of their time and they start to feel guilty about that, or it's actually triggering some of the stuff they're going through. And so I work with them on like, TikTok doesn't do a very good job at advertising that you can filter out some things. Mm-hmm. Like, for example, if I'm working with someone that's got an eating disorder and, they might be Googling things about the disorder or weight or calories, or they might say things out loud. And so the phone is picking up on that. But TikTok is not smart enough yet to know, hey, she's looking at that for the wrong reason, so don't put that in her face. So these people maybe struggling are getting these TikTok videos about like, lose 30 pounds in 30 days or, count your calories, whatever. And then it's triggering what they've already got going on. So there are ways to put in certain words and phrases, but it's not very well advertised. And I think TikTok needs to take a little bit more responsibility for that accountability.
I think that's just social media in general. I have
Totally.
those conversations with Instagram too, for sure.
Yeah.
And just the stuff that's popping up, and yeah,
Huh.
but
I
definitely.
never thought about it from that
Mhm.
aspect, to be honest. Because I use it.
Mm-hmm.
I use social media, but I use it more for like marketing purposes rather than consumption of it.
Sure.
And so when you say it that way, it's just like, wow, they're actually getting triggered by what they're seeing rather than actually being like, oh, well, this is
100%.
just another post. Let me just move on from it. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, I
Right.
guess I know you guys have your own
Mhm.
ways of dealing with that. Please don't say it here because, again, this is not the podcast, guys. If you guys want to hear from them, you got to book them on their calendars. That's the only way you're going to get that.
That's true.
That's interesting.
That's
I don't
funny.
know. TikTok is
Yeah.
a big question mark still to me, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm glad it
Yeah,
works for you.
for sure.
And keep going until it doesn't work anymore, if ever.
Mhm.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
empowering for the moment. And just like anything in life, you continue to assess, and is this serving me? And if it's no longer serving me, then
adapt and
do
adjust.
something else.
Those are the two
Yeah.
words I live by a
Mhm.
lot. Adapt and adjust.
Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah. But I think one thing with her page in particular that, and the reason it is so positive is because it's positive and it's real. Like, and I, not that you're the only person doing anything real and anything, trying to be positive and things like that, but you're just being very real about your experience and your journey and what therapy looks like. And I think that's important. That's part of the reason I wanted to be a guest on on Walk and Grow on this podcast, was to say like what therapy looks like and the real parts of it and
Yeah.
what's tough about it, and just show like, oh, these are two pretty chill therapists. Like, therapy isn't scary, just
Yeah.
things like that. And but I think that's part of the reason that people do gravitate towards those clips, and everything else that you're doing is just that realness of like, she's just a woman who, like,
Yeah.
is on this journey just like I am, and she happens to be doing this job that's important and that can help me.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's really cool, and that's what draws people in.
Yeah.
And if that's what TikTok was about, if there
Yeah,
was more
good
people
luck.
doing things like that, not that it all has to be therapeutic,
Yeah,
or it all has to be, comedy can be therapeutic, it can be playful
Yeah.
and just fun and random
yeah.
and stupid. Like, all of that has value as well. One of my favorite podcasts before Walking Girl, of course, was just, the reason I loved it was because it was so dumb. Like, there was
Yeah.
no benefit other than, this is so stupid, it makes me laugh. And
Right.
and that's okay, because the stuff that we do is so heavy all the time. I need something stupid to just kind of offset. So of course there's a time and place for all of that, but it just really does, I think, allow people to identify and just have someone that they can, yeah, look up to.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah.
And it feels like a more, like, I noticed even when I had started doing some videos, there was like some, some hits, some like following on it. And then there was a recent video I did that was like very super vulnerable, just about like my experience, literally just me talking openly. And that's when, I started to get a lot more involvement. So that's definitely the direction I want to go in. And that's ultimately why I started
Mm,
songwriting too in the first place, was like to get that connection. But I think there's always, songwriting is always up for interpretation, which I think is a beautiful thing. Like, I could write something, and then someone hears it
hmm
in a different way. But it feels like you can be a little more direct when you're just
hmm
talking into a screen like
Yeah,
this.
that's completely fair. So
That's
I
true.
think I've asked Courtney this before, but by having you, Adara, here, it gives me another opportunity to do the same thing. For an individual that's
Sure.
like, therapy isn't for me, this is just not my thing. I think it's pointless, it's useless. What do you say to that individual?
Hmm. That's tough, because I never want to force someone to do things that they don't want to do. But I think, especially from the background that Courtney and I come from, working a lot with kids like in the system who it may not have been their idea to come to therapy. In fact, most of the
Mm,
time, it was not their idea to come to
Mm-hmm.
therapy. So I think we've had that conversation many times. And to be honest with you, um, I think people don't even realize that sometimes just having a conversation about nonsense can be therapeutic. And
Mm-hmm.
so just being silly, I mean, with the teenagers, if they're like, I don't want to be here, fine. All right, let's talk about TikTok. Let's talk about who's the cool girl at school, and what is she doing that pissed you
Mm-hmm.
off? And,
yeah.
like, just having this like real, almost like a friend type of conversation with them, usually can kind of get that wall down. And
Mm-hmm.
I've seen it work. I've seen it work. I've seen it not work, but it's
Mm-hmm.
usually my go-to is let's just talk. We don't got to talk about feelings.
Oh, that's interesting.
I think a lot of it comes down, not to re-answer the question, but I think a lot of it comes down to like the language that we use too. Because sometimes it's like, okay, yeah, you might not need it. You might be fine without it, but that doesn't mean it's not going to help you.
Right.
And especially with the teens, I'll say, okay, you don't want to be here. Like, that's not what you want to work on. Is there anything that you do want to get better at? And, or is there any goals that you can think of that like maybe you could get better at? I have teenage boys. We just talk about sports a lot. And like,
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, what can we do to help you like focus in school or things like that? That's going to help you with your football career and things like that. And, or sometimes people are like, I really want to get better. I have to do this packet for school. I'm like, okay, what subject is it? It's health or it's English. I'm like, we could absolutely make that therapeutic. Like there's ways that, I can do what you want to do, while in the session or things like that. And not that we're forcing it, like, no, you have to be here and we're going to find a way to make you like it. It's not that, but I think a lot of it comes down to the language is just like, I don't need it. I don't have any problems. And that's kind of still what people think about therapy. I think we're getting out of it a little bit more, but it's that like, I don't have problems that I need to see somebody. It's like, you're right, you don't, but you can still have goals and they can help you stay on track to those goals.
Yeah.
But.
And Courtney, I know you haven't gotten to like do much of this yet, but now that because I thought like kids, like working with kids, like that's what I know how to do. I'm good with that. And then when I started getting adult clients, I kind of panicked because I was like, I don't know what to do here. But man, can it be so magical because they're coming to the table ready and willing to work. And it's just a different, and of course, when you have a teen that like doesn't want to do the work and then you end up getting through to them, it's a whole different rewarding experience, but really just like hitting the ground running and like having someone that just wants to do the work is really cool too. So I hope
no.
you can get
That's,
more.
and I'm speaking from personal experience. I'm not the type of person I've ever said I don't need it, but I've never really seeked out for it. And I think that's part of the reason I believe I have good people around me that help. So just like you guys were mentioning, for that individual that doesn't, I think therapy could be a really good thing. And that's not a recommendation. This is my personal opinion. However, got to back it up there. But yeah, no, it's something that I've never really thought about where it's like, yeah, you can actually, it's another person to speak to just whatever's on top of your mind. Instead of holding it in, let it out. It's the best thing that we can do.
Or instead of dumping it all on your friends. Because that's a lot that I see lately too, as I've had some clients say like, I could see it on my friend's face. Like it's too much to bring this every time that we hang out. And that's fair.
When you say dump it on your friends, are you saying like dump your problems on your friends? And
yes. And having friends, that's what they're for. But there's a line and there's a balance.
There's a limit.
I had to draw one of my lines with one of my friends years ago. They wanted I don't know what it is, but it's like, when you have a friend, you bring them into their relationship problems, and it's just like, well, then the other person is gonna do it. I learned that lesson a long time ago. Don't be involved in other people's relationship. Mind your business, literally. That's the best piece of advice I would give to anybody that's in the middle of any sort of relationship. Just mind your business. Just say, it's not for me. It's your relationship.
But also just understanding that everyone has their own background. And a lot of the people that I go to in my life right now, every time I bring something to them, I'm like, I know exactly where you're coming from with your perspective. And I have a friend who's like, just tell me, I help you, I help you. And then I tell them, and I know exactly what they're going to say. And they say that exact thing that I think they're going to say. And I'm like, why do I tell you? Like, why this happens every time? So having someone, the therapist is going to be that non-judgmental and unbiased. Everyone has those biases and things like that, but they're able to come from that non-judgmental perspective. And we have those friends who are like, I need your advice on this. And the advice is like, don't talk to him. It's like, that's not advice. Like, just things like that or whatever the case may be. But just, it's like, that's not, all right, whatever. Like this conversation, you can tell that's the end of it. But yeah, just having someone is going to be non-judgmental, is going to be, in the middle. And that's the thing. I think people expect like, oh, the therapist is just going to tell me what to do and tell me how to get there. And it's like, no, we're going to ask you the questions. You are going to be the one to set, set your goals, like help yourself to understand where your thoughts or your patterns or whatever it is going to come from, and you're going to do all the work, and that's what makes it the most empowering. Your friends, unless they're therapists or experienced in this field, aren't going to know how to navigate it so that you can do the work for yourself. But this wasn't to sell therapy, but I'm glad we're having this conversation, because I don't think it's
No,
had very
it
often.
shows a lot. I mean, you guys are both in the industry. I'm the outsider, so it gives me an opportunity from the outside looking in to just kind of get those questions out that many people may have. So, anyone that's listening here, take it as you please. Best believe it. It could help you. It probably won't. I don't know. Just it's better yet. Just try it. You never really know what's gonna happen until you truly indeed try it. But I will say you do have an obsession. It sounds like at least an obsession with just helping people. Where is that coming from? Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Me or
Sorry.
Courtney?
Yeah.
You're the
Yeah,
guest.
yeah. So growing up, my mom worked for the church. She still works for the church, but that was very much a part of my life where we would have to go, volunteer to feed the homeless. We did this thing where we would go around. It was called the Soup Patrol. We'd go around in a van and we'd stop in areas of Tucson where we would get out and we would just line up and give food, give hot chocolate, blankets, whatever to,
Yeah.
the community that needed it. But I at that point, I remember that I was always the kid who would be like hanging out and being like, "Oh my God, I like your hair," and just like connecting with these people that unfortunately, some of the other kids were maybe like afraid of or like hesitant to talk to, and then later in life, like one of my first jobs was working for a day program for adults with developmental disabilities, and it was the same thing there. Where it was like there was just no hesitation of like I wasn't going to talk to them like they were little kids. I remember I walked in, and I'll never forget her. There was this woman, and she was like in her 40s, cognitively on a lower level, but she looked me up and down. She looked at my shoes, and she was nonverbal. She had just a few words that she would say, and she gave me this look. And I said right back to her, I was like, girl, you don't like my shoes? Like, I had no problem being like, what's up? Not like, oh hi, how are you? And that's just like always been how it was. So because of that, I knew I always wanted to do some sort of helping. And then I think it was like in high school. I had a friend that would call on Tuesdays, and it became like what we called Tuesday Talks with Dara. And it was looking back, it was definitely therapy sessions that I was doing. Um, you know, Definitely probably said many wrong things because I wasn't trained, but yeah, it's just always kind of been in
You
me.
just gave yourself like a hashtag. I hope you know that. Tuesday Talks. Yeah, Tuesday Talks with
With
Adara.
Dara.
Yeah, that's a good hashtag that you can run
Yep,
with and use that to take for TikTok.
that's
And
true.
see, guys, this is exactly why you
That's
guys jump
true.
on these shows because you don't know what you're gonna get out of it. You got a therapist and you got someone who thinks business, and
Exactly.
so just combining the two. But yeah, no, I think that's a great hashtag that you can run with every Tuesday. It gives you a segment, people know what to expect, and you can take that into whatever avenue you want. But oh, man, that was an alley oop.
Yeah.
You gonna slam dunk it for me?
Ay, ay, ay. Where's your
Ah,
horn
you
noise,
come
Ronnie?
on. That is a
This
perfect
is a
time, but
perfect
nah, you
that's a
said it,
perfect
and you
time.
kind of just you ruined the moment. I'm just
Sorry.
you.
Well, it was right there. You could have slam dunked it for
That's
yourself.
fine. That's fine. I'll
That's
find
funny.
another opportunity if it's not today. It's all good.
My bad, my
If you
bad.
want to know what she's talking about this. See, that's what she
Oh,
was
there it
referring to.
is.
But
He's all excited to get that out there. That's all right.
before we got sidetracked, sorry.
Yeah.
Um, what does the future hold for you now? I mean, you kind of sounds like you got a lot going on for yourself. You're coming from Arizona, songwriter,
Hmm.
singer, therapist, living in Shy Town is what I call it. I call it Shy Town.
Yeah, of
So
course.
like,
Yeah.
what's next?
Um, I think definitely continuing to perform and to write and hopefully record and release. Unfortunately, that is stuff that costs money that we gotta hang out on the funds that we moved across the country for a second. But as far as like, the social media stuff, I think I'm just like really excited about that, and I want to connect to more people. I want to use it for both therapy and music, to just reach as many people as I can. And I do want my own
Mm.
practice eventually. That's definitely in the cards. Probably many years from now. Logistically, I have another year and a half before I can even have a clinical license. So, but yeah, I think the sky's the limit in the way. I know everyone says that, but the sky's the limit as to what my limit is and what I want for myself. Especially this move. Like, again, on paper, it's like, yeah, whatever. You move from Arizona to Chicago, like people do
Yeah.
stuff like that all the time. It's more like Courtney said, the metaphor for how difficult that was for me, spiritually, emotionally, all that stuff. Um, and being able to do that and just like truly finding myself. And again, just the idea that last year, if you would have told me I was doing this stuff right now, I would have said there's no freaking way. So that is exciting, that there is an Adara a year from now that is like, no way, you know. And that could be a good no way, it could be a bad no way, but it just means things are changing that I can't predict, and being comfortable with that is something that's new to me.
It's growth. It's a beautiful thing. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful thing. Courtney, you got anything you want to ask?
Thank you.
I love it. Yeah, I love hearing all that, and I just want to mention. I know we talked before. I already mentioned, being real and things like that, and we talked a little bit about vulnerability. But I think it's just so important. Like, again, in the therapy space, kind of like you mentioned, like people expect us to be this, like, oh, we have all the answers, or you must know this, so you must be great at it in your personal life, or whatever the case may be. And then I know I came kind of from that place with your music, and just seeing you even on Instagram or whatever it was, like, she's so confident, and she's just, your personality when you're playing music is just, it's fantastic, and your whole aura and everything. But knowing deep down that that's not always real life, and not always, like you mentioned, some of the struggles, and not always feeling confident in yourself. And I just want to say thank you for sharing that. And I think that's super important from both spaces, like being a performer and someone whose image is big, but also someone who's, like, I guess, emotionally or supposed to have it all together, question mark. um but from both of those spaces, I think it's so big to show, like, the vulnerability, the challenges, and, like I said, just the realness. So I'm glad you were able to do that on another platform.
Thanks, guys.
But yeah, we
Yeah, I
appreciate you. I think
wanna.
that's really
I
cool.
saw a clip
Yeah.
before we spoke today, and it was one of your performances that you had, and everyone in the stands was saying encore, encore, encore. And I saw you started tearing up, and I was like, "That's just tears of joy, happiness. It's not tears of just like being sad or anything." I was just like, "That is a beautiful scene,"
Yeah.
because you just those
Yeah.
moments you can't get back. And I'm sure with just me saying encore, encore, you know
Yeah.
exactly what I'm referring to.
Yeah, that was my first
Ah.
show in Chicago, and that was a moment where it was like, you made the right
Mm.
decision. And I could cry about it now, but yeah, I made the right
There we
decision.
go.
So
So to wrap things up, I'm gonna
yeah,
ask you this one last question. It's what tip do you
sure.
really have for someone that's looking to strengthen their mindset?
Whew. I mean, cliche to say therapy, I guess. Um, um, but I guess, I don't know. For me, it is mindset, and it's when you have this like gut feeling, to trust that gut feeling. I think a lot of times we don't trust ourselves, and we say, I can't do that a lot. I know that's why I hadn't left Arizona when it was some years I should have left Arizona. But I didn't believe in myself. So trusting that gut feeling, maybe reaching out to therapy if you need it, but also just chilling out. It's just life. I don't know. It is what it is. So I don't know if any of that's helpful. Again, I told you I'm in a good space, but it's really hard to put to words. So I'm just riding the high of the feeling right now. I hope that can happen for people as well.
There it is. There you guys have it. There's a Dara for you guys. Now, Dara, where can the people find you? I know you're big on TikTok, so make sure you drop those.
Yeah,
We'll have it in the descriptions again, but just let them know.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. For like Instagram and most handles for my music, it's Adara Ray Music. I don't use Lialios because it's a big, long word with a lot of vowels. Ray is my middle name. Also, my band is Adara Ray and the
Mm.
Homewreckers. That's where my Spotify, iTunes, all that stuff comes down to. And then the TikTok that we've been talking about is called Your Anxious Social Worker. So that's me. I'm Your Anxious Social Worker. And
That's pretty cool.
yeah, check me out. Check the music out. Check the TikTok out.
That's a pretty
Happy to
cool
be here.
name.
Thank you,
I
guys.
like that. But I want to wrap this up and say thank you for everyone that is tuning in, especially if you stay to the end, because wherever you're listening to, don't forget to show love, share the show, because again, you don't know who else is going to need us. Leave those reviews, leave those comments. Let us know what we did good, bad, or whatever it is that you want to leave, because everything we preach over here is about empowering your mind, transforming your reality, and unleashing your power, because you don't know what you're going to get out of it. So until next time, keep on applying those perspectives, education, growth, and collaboration, y'all.